Hello everyone. This video is meant to be an in-depth look into the data collected by the deathlog add-on developed for the hardcore game mode in World of Warcraft. For those unfamiliar, players in this game mode get one life only, and if they die, they must delete their character or transfer it off to another realm. The add-on provides much of this information to players already in-game, but I thought it would be interesting to take a slightly different look at the data. Many of you might be familiar with deadliest monster lists that look something like this, and while this list is accurate, it doesn't quite tell the whole story. Upon examining the raw data for myself, a slightly different picture began to emerge, and it is this difference that I would like to be the focus of the video. The second deadliest thing in all of Azeroth is not the Defias Trapper. Instead, a new challenger emerges. Yes, I am talking, of course, about gravity. According to my findings, it boasts an impressive number of 5,752 kills. While gravity may seem simple to understand, you will come to see that this omnipresent law of physics continues to mystify the player base. With a detailed map of each zone, and all the fall damage deaths that occur in them mapped out in a 3D histogram on the coordinates, perhaps we can begin to make sense of it and see where the player base's misunderstanding occurs. I've found some very creative places that people have managed to fall to their deaths in my analysis. Speaking of which, you may also be wondering exactly what I'm doing here in this lake. Well, the truth is, this was my first stop on this investigation of fall damage killing players in World of Warcraft. It may surprise you to know, but 2 people have been killed by falling to their deaths here. Does that seem strange? It's strange because there is nothing to even jump off here, and a gnome doesn't even touch the bottom of the lake. Well, today we will attempt to answer how that happened, as well as many other things. However, I would first like to take a trip over to Kalimdor to investigate one of the most dangerous cities Hardcore World of Warcraft has to offer: Thunderbluff. While we head to Thunderbluff, I'd like to talk about how this project was done. The deathlog add-on has a GitHub page where they've published their source code, as well as the databases of player death statistics they have collected over the last year or so. The numbers you might see with my graphs may be different than the numbers displayed in the official add-on. This is because they haven't updated the add-on yet to include all the data. The databases they have published have information that looks like this. You can see here some useful things, and some things that require a bit of work to properly understand. Player name, guild, and level are simple enough. But the map position, class ID, area ID, and source ID all need to be interpreted with a bit of programming. Fortunately, with some Python magic, these databases can be tamed and made useful to the aspiring data analyst. The graphs rendered and displayed in this video are quite similar to the graphs displayed by the add-on itself in-game, but I thought it would be more appealing visually to make the heat maps in 3D rather than on a 2D plane. The overall dataset they have published contains more than 400,000 player deaths. This is an enormous number and has so much potential for exploration. My goal with this video and those to come is to probe this dataset and find some interesting things to share. And on that note, let's look again at the map of Thunderbluff and see what we can see. I've confined this image to contain only deaths by fall damage that have occurred here, though rest assured this is not the only category. According to my data, there have been 412 deaths to falling damage in Thunderbluff, an impressive sum that is more than 7% of all fall deaths total. We can see clearly that the graph makes sense. Thunderbluff is an elevated city, and the deaths to falling damage occur along the perimeter where the edge drops off. But the large spike in the northeast caught my attention, and I took to the ground to investigate for myself what could be so deadly about that particular area. I approached with caution, sure I would find something quite dangerous. And I was surprised when I found a simple wooden bridge. Yes, as you can see, it is merely a simple wooden bridge with nothing really out of the ordinary about it. With the sheer number of deaths mapped in this area, I half expected it to snap on me halfway across, or throw me off somehow. But again, we are met with conclusive evidence that World of Warcraft players do not understand the concept of gravity. Looking closer at the breakdown by class doesn't yield any additional insights as to why these players seem to lack an understanding about the physical world that the rest of us are born with. Although class breakdown and location suggest it is mostly Taurens that are killed here, and that is no surprise. Perhaps something about the nature of the bovine makes them more susceptible for this apparent lapse in judgment. We may never know for sure. One final note about the gravity-induced deaths in this area before we move on. I would like to pay respects to the 10 highest-level players that met their untimely demise here in Thunderbluff. That list is on the screen now for your viewing pleasure. Alas, fallen comrades, you left us all too soon. Holy that guy was a level 60. Staying in Kalimdor for the time being, I would now like to travel south to another dangerous area in this continent. Maybe here we will get some more clues as to what is tricking players in classic WoW to think they can fly. Let's head to Thousand Needles to investigate further. Looking at this graph, we can see that falling is quite the killer in this zone as well. Even though the grand total is less than what we saw in Thunderbluff, the fact is that most players do not make it to this zone when leveling a hardcore character. So it achieves this high number of 350 kills despite being far less populated. There are a few areas here that bear closer investigation, so again I took to the ground to see what is happening myself. Right away I found what I deemed to be the likely culprit. The Grand Lift, a very high elevator that moves players up and down between the Southern Barrens and Thousand Needles. I journeyed through the zone to investigate the other large spike in player deaths, and again I found an elevator. I decided I must study this elevator for a while. So many people have fallen off of it here. And this is not a starter zone. Players here have invested some real hours into their characters. Surely this elevator must do something unexpected. Maybe it tosses players off it randomly, or there are wandering monsters that will attack them as they ride it. Despite my studied observations, I detected no such things. The elevator simply moves up and down, in a steady, rhythmic, and predictable way. Why this should confound a large portion of the player base I cannot say, but it is another clue: elevators. I think now it is time we take a journey back across the sea to the Eastern Kingdoms and investigate another city. Finally, we arrive at Undercity, nestled beneath the ruins of Lordaeron. As you will see from this video, it is, in all aspects, the city of the dead. It is the undead race's central hub, but also it is the deadliest city in the game by quite a large margin. 880 players have fallen to their deaths here. That is 15.3% of the total fall damage deaths in the game, in basically one spot. Many others have drowned or been killed by quest monsters. Players regard cities as safe havens in this game mode, but Undercity is not at all, judging by these numbers. In addition to the fall damage deaths, a handful of players have apparently drowned here too, as well as a shocking number of mages have been killed by rift spawns. Undercity is not a safe place. A few other NPCs have scored kills here, but those numbers are inconsequential when compared to the sheer number clipped by gravity. Just like in Thousand Needles and Thunderbluff, here at Undercity, we are greeted with the elevator. A thing I have come to regard with the grave respect I would a raid boss. I entered this contraption with care. So many players have died here that this time I was certain I would find something out of the ordinary. Instead, it seemed quite pedestrian. The door opens at the top, the player steps in and rides it down, then exits at the bottom. It was clear at once to me how this device worked, and I navigated it expertly and without trouble, arriving safe and alive at the bottom. I was a bit dismayed at finding an ordinary elevator, because again it left me without clear answer as to why so many players disregard the simple laws of nature when they arrive at such places. I decided this time to wait around until I witnessed firsthand one of these poor individuals who treated their own sanctity of life with such carelessness. Fortunately, I didn't need to wait long, but I was stumped yet again when my questions remained unanswered. Alas, the mystery remains so far unsolved. It is possible we may never really know. Maybe some things are just not meant to be understood. But other things, with a little bit of work and intuition, can be. Remember those 2 falling deaths I told you about that occurred right here in the shallows of this lake? I would like to tell you how I think they happened. First, I tried very hard to die of fall damage here myself for a while. But before long, I realized this was unlikely to work. Something else must be going on. But what? In search of clues, I went to the database. Perhaps the player names might give an indication of what happened here. And lo, Cannon Tester. The level 1 warrior died of fall damage at these precise coordinates. Cannon Tester. Isn't that interesting? Perhaps he was shot out of a cannon somehow, but what cannons exist in classic WoW? We need to look no further than the Dark Moon Fair. A minigame exists where a player is shot out of a cannon and they need to try to land in a target. Knowing this, it makes perfect sense a player might make a burner character to test this out, rather than risk their main who might die of fall damage. Shout out to the YouTube channel, Defcamp Melderon TV. I found this infographic on their video about the fair. It's worth mentioning that the coordinates provided in that infographic closely align with where Mr. Cannon Tester perished, so I think it's safe to call this mystery solved. If only the elevator mystery were so easy to crack. Well, that's all I have for you all today. If there are other hardcore deaths you would like me to investigate, let me know down below in the comments. I have a wealth of data and graphs generated, every kill of every monster in every zone. Or if there is something else here you would have liked to see in more detail, let me know that too. It was a lot of fun working with those databases, so I would like to thank the owners of the deathlog add-on for publishing it. This video wouldn't have been possible at all without them. The other credits for music or graphics you can find in the description. Thank you all for watching, and stay safe out there. You never know when an elevator might attack.